Attention, attention, all personnel. Incoming podcast. This is MASH Matters.
Here we are, back for another episode of MASH Matters, the podcast celebrating the greatest television series of all time, MASH, which co-starred this guy.
Yeah.
Jeff Maxwell. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, Ryan Patrick. And by the way, I think the greatest podcast in the history of podcasting, which hasn't been that long, really, is a little podcast called MASH Matters.
Oh, I was anxiously awaiting to see which podcast you were talking about.
Yeah, there's only one that deserves that mantle.
I'm not going to argue with you.
Okay, good.
How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm great. I'm excited about this episode. We're going to talk about a lot of emails that people have sent us, and it's going to be fun. And are you looking forward to this, or would you?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Not at all. No, I'm kidding. Of course, I am looking forward to this. We always love hearing from our listeners and reading a bunch of questions that we don't know the answers to. And that's what we're going to do yet again on another episode here of MASH Matters.
Isn't it such a relief to be able to say that? We don't know the answers to any of your questions.
Right.
We have no responsibility because we've already said we don't know.
What I love is that people keep listening to us for some reason, even though we are explicit that we do not know the answers to pretty much any of the questions that come in.
Yeah.
Maybe they just keep listening thinking that maybe this will be the episode where they actually know something.
Maybe this time they'll know the answers.
Spoiler alert, we don't. But we are going to start here, Jeff, with cleaning up some stuff from a past few episodes.
All right. This is from Jim. Enjoyed the latest episode of your wonderful podcast. Sometimes you hear the voicemail. And coincidentally, the day after listening, I was watching Mail Call 3, Season 6, Episode 21, and noted there was a third banana daiquiri reference when Colonel Potter offers to buy Klinger a drink after Klinger had returned from being AWOL over Laverne asking him for a divorce. The closing line is Klinger saying, "You know what I'm in the mood for? A banana daiquiri." There you go. More banana daiquiri references.
Yeah, banana daiquiri has become the new grape knee-high. It just won't die.
It won't go away.
No.
Also, your comments about Hawkeye knitting triggered something else in my memory. In addition to the actual knitting scene, there are numerous scenes throughout the years where Hawkeye and Trapper, or BJ, are winding up yarn, adding to this little odd plot point. I wonder if we'll ever know what continually inspired this. Perhaps knitting coasters to put the banana daiquiri glasses on? Ha ha! All right, Jim's a comedy writer. Okay, Thanks, Jim. Send us some more jokes.
Well, speaking of knitting, we heard from our friend Elizabeth, who was a guest on our podcast a few episodes back, who, just happens to be Alan Alda's daughter. Elizabeth sent us an email and said, "Hi, guys, I'm listening to the recent MASH Matters and laughing out loud about the knitting bit. That TikTok woman was spot on. I don't think he knits, but he gave it a good try. I vaguely remember him trying to learn to knit at one point, but not sure if it was for MASH or not." So there you go. I think we have the definitive answer. Alan Alda did not knit. Wait a minute. Wait, hold on. Was that a real answer that we just gave?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, wait. Oh, jump back, Jack. Holy moly.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm starting to get palpitations.
Oh.
Whoa.
Oh, no. We peaked too soon.
My arthritis is flaring up right now. I don't know what to do.
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
we should have saved that one for the end.
Please forgive us. We will never do that again.
Never.
Okay.
Never.
And Karen writes, on the Over and Out episode, you two were talking about how to pronounce cavalry quickly. Both of you, I'm glad it was both of us, because if it was just one of us, it would have been humiliating. Both of you promptly pronounced the word Calvary. Calvary is the place where Christ was crucified. Cavalry are soldiers on horseback, like Colonel Potter. It's amazing how often the two words are spoken or written when meant for the other. Well, that's interesting. But when you say them quickly, as I think we were doing for some weird reason, it's hard. Calvary and cavalry.
Cavalry.
It's tricky.
I'm thinking now, if there were soldiers on horseback at the place where Christ was crucified, that would be the Calvary cavalry. Right?
That's exactly what it would have been called, yes.
Dan says, "Hi, Jeff and Ryan. My name is Dan, a 34-year-old from Bucharest, Romania. As a kid growing up, I'd always change the channel when the tent scenes from the MASH came on, that I now know as The Swamp. I assumed it's a grown-up show and that I wouldn't like it. Last year, I took a chance as it was available on Disney Plus, and I was hooked. Binge watched it any minute I got. What an amazing show! The character I identify with the most is BJ for being the level-headed one, plus that amazing mustache. Once the show was done, I stumbled upon your podcast, and I'm now up to speed with all of the episodes. The first Mike Farrell interview was my favorite. My question for Jeff, do you know if your book can be bought from Europe or just shipped from the States to us? Looking forward to cooking some of the recipes, but also to show my appreciation for your contributions to MASH. Thank you, Dan. First of all, I'm sorry that you stumbled over our podcast. I hope you're okay. Secondly, for the folks here in the States, yes, overseas, MASH is on Disney Plus. And I have a feeling that eventually Hulu may go away and Hulu will become part of Disney Plus. So it's very probable that eventually MASH will be on Disney Plus here as well. But right now, it's not on Disney Plus. I just wanted to point that out. So, Jeff, the question, do you know about buying the book overseas?
No.
Okay.
What I would recommend is, now I do, because I'm associated with Amazon, and the book is available through Amazon.com, Secret to the MASH Mess, The Lost Recipes of Private Igor, the 50th anniversary edition.
Link in the show notes.
You can go to Amazon and sort of poke around, and I think you can buy it. I don't know.
I would think you could.
I think you can. There is an Amazon.Europe or whatever country, EU.com, I believe. And I think if you poke around with that, you'll find something.
If Amazon is available in Bucharest, then you should be able to get it, I would think.
Yes.
But we're not certain.
I would say go to Amazon, try and buy the book, give them the address, and let them figure it out. Because that's what they're supposed to do.
Exactly.
All right. And if it doesn't work, let us know and we'll just show up there and bring you one.
We'll do a dramatic reading. You can invite your friends. We'll cream some weenies.
That is a round trip first class airline ticket stuff.
Right. Which, with the cost of postage, maybe that's cheaper than buying the book. Who knows?
Maybe.
In Bucharest. I don't know. I have no clue. But
I'll bring the cream of weenie soup. I'll make it, freeze it, and bring it.
Dan, if you are able to locate it, please let us know.
Yes.
All right, let's move on.
Now, isn't it nice that we really didn't answer that question? We had no idea.
We're back.
We're back.
The universe is healing.
Woo, doggies. Now I feel a lot better.
Oh.
David says, I'm just now getting caught up on your podcast, having started listening during long weekend drives at the start of March. Regarding your information to the listener in episode 105, who asked about watching AfterMASH episodes, yes, indeed, every episode of the sequel series is available on YouTube via those off-the-air network airings. However, there are a couple of problems with what's available on YouTube. One is that some of the earlier episodes that have been posted have the wrong opening credits sequence edited into them, as they are using the credits from the last part of the first season after J.O. Sanders' character was written out of the show. Also, and a much bigger problem, ladies and gentlemen, one of the later first season episodes is only available via an airing from Eastern European television and therefore isn't in English. And third, and this is really unfortunate, the episode called Trials, the one with Colonel Flagg that I consider to be one of the two sole great episodes of the profoundly mismanaged second season, is missing around 3 or so random minutes throughout the episode due to what appears to have been somebody's very faulty VCR that was being used to record that one back in the fall of 1984. When one of the main MASH fan sites was doing recaps of the AfterMASH episodes a few years ago, I helped fill in the gaps of what's missing from YouTube's version of Trials by delving into the original production script I own from that episode. I actually had the first website dedicated to the AfterMASH series years ago, which was based on information I had collected about the series during its original run, including audio recordings I used to tape from the CBS airings, much of which is now available on the internet about that show, originated from information I had on that website from 2+ decades ago, including a couple of errors I had on that old website. And you are correct. The series has never been issued on DVD, except by people who are just taking the recordings that are on YouTube, including the one foreign language one and the incomplete Colonel Flag one, and mass producing them on home manufactured, pirated DVD sets. I rest my case. My goodness gracious. A true expert of the AfterMASH series here.
Yes, thank you, David. We appreciate it. There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
We've talked about it before. Yeah, the series is out there. You can watch it. The quality is not good because it was a transfer just from somebody's VCR recording, and it is incomplete. As David mentioned, you can't find everything, and even the stuff that is there may not be in the language you can understand or may have stuff cut out of it. If you go searching and say, hey, I'm going to buy it on DVD, don't. It's just somebody trying to scam you.
Yeah.
Maybe someday, some way, there will be some method for us to get decent versions of AfterMASH. I don't know how that would happen, when it would happen, or if it will ever happen. But hopefully someday we will be able to watch that series the way it was supposed to be seen. Until then, we have YouTube.
We will be selling DVDs of MASH Matters, however.
Oh, yes.
Those are available in the lobby.
But those two are also dubbed from the VHS.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why. Moving on. Mark O'Neill, who is the co-author of TV's MASH, the ultimate guidebook. He says, I just listened to the podcast summing up season 2. First of all, thanks for the unexpected mention of the book that Ed and I did. Second, I tuned into that particular podcast to hear about Jackie Cooper because I'm both fascinated by and unsure of exactly what it is that any given director does to make or break an episode. I'd sure like to know if other podcasts discuss this. Third, as season 2 is my favorite season, I will tell you that Crisis is definitely in the running for my top spot. Now we come to a big but. With Klinger as the Statue of Liberty as a close second, him hang gliding out of the camp is my absolute favorite of all his attempts to escape. All Gelbart ever said about it that I was privy to was that he was a bit unhappy with the special effects of the day. Personally, I think it came out fine. I even had a custom trading card made from a screen grab of that scene, and Jamie Farr kindly signed it for me. I make no apologies for loving the red bird with fuzzy pink feet.
All right, Mark. Yeah. I remember that when that book came out. And, it was, I met Mark and his partner, Ed, when they did that book some years ago when we were all on the internet thing. And we had those, I don't remember what the heck it was called, but you could talk to each other.
The forum.
The forum, yeah. You get on the thing and talk to each other about various things. And to his credit, Larry Gelbart, who was a terrific human being, used to show up there and answer a lot of questions. And he did a wonderful job. I learned stuff that I didn't know, talking to him and hearing what he said.
And by the way, you can still access that forum. I don't think you can post to it anymore, but you can still access it. And if I can find it, I'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Really?
Yeah.
Where is it? It was on some protocol or something, wasn't it?
It's like alt.mash.tv.com.net.gov. I don't know, something like that. I'll find it and put a link in the show notes.
Okay. Well, it was fun. So if anybody has nothing to do and you remember all those dots, go look at it because it's pretty neat.
But yeah, you are mentioned in that book a lot. You're quoted in that book quite often.
Well, of course. I mean, let's be reasonable.
Before we move on, I have to, address the big red elephant with fuzzy pink feet in the room. As most listeners of this podcast might know, that is probably my least favorite scene in all of MASH. And so it just goes to show that in today's divisive world, is it divisive or divisive? I don't know how to pronounce that.
It's Calvary, I think. Calvary.
Thank you. In today's Calvary world, or is it cavalry? You know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's nice to know, isn't it, that we can have differing opinions about something that we are passionate about, and it doesn't turn into name calling and more divisiveness or divisiveness or calvaryness. Isn't that nice?
Oh, shut up. Let's get on with it. Come on.
Well, in that case, Mark, you're wrong.
By the way, Klinger, if I just may talk about Klinger for a second. Again,
Sure.
I did a little research about that trial episode, and this is all I'm going to say. There were a number of stunts that Klinger pulled in Korea. I'm just going to read some of them because they're kind of funny. Eating a Jeep, tried to escape on a rubber raft, tried to set himself on fire, walked around with an imaginary camel, wet his bed, played with dolls, sent pictures of himself dressed as Rita Hayworth to Severn generals, posed as Moses, posed as a nun, posed as the Statue of Liberty, and tried to fly out of Korea on a hang glider made out of bamboo poles and canvas.
Yes. And that's just a few. There's more than that.
That's kind of funny.
Klinger.
Okay. Cynthia said, Jeff and Ryan, I can't begin to tell you how much I love your MASH Matters podcast and what MASH means to me, although I'm about to give it a try. MASH began airing weekly when I was a teenager, and I watched it with my mom while Dad played piano at a bar or restaurant, his second job after his civil service job was done for the day. And I watched MASH while going through many rites of passage. By the time its season 11 episodes were airing, I was not only in the military, but a new mom myself. Then I became a nurse. Now I'm retired, my daughters are grown, and I'm a grandmom. I was a caregiver for my mom until a few months ago when my back suddenly gave out and I had to have emergency back surgery. 3 weeks later, my mom passed away. Grief is never easy, nor is the process of grieving short. But I have been binge watching MASH on Hulu over and over. It just seems to have some kind of comforting medicinal quality that I need right now. One day I went looking for podcasts about MASH, and among others, I found yours. Was I ever lucky? By far, MASH Matters is my favorite podcast. You, the host, are an excellent duo as you each bring your own perspectives to it. And I know you'll understand me when I say I take you to bed with me. Your podcasts lull me to sleep. No, you're not boring. I also listen to you in the daytime. Okay, well, thanks for saying that.
Yes.
MASH matters to me because it keeps me company, makes me laugh a lot and cry a little, and helps me feel less lonely. I recently bought the MASH cookbook, which we all love, especially the pictures. I proudly display my MASH Matters stickers. There's even one on my car bumper. And I have a notebook for writing notes and bits of dialogue from each episode. I've never been such a fan of a TV series and a podcast before. MASH is medicine. And MASH matters, the vitamins that go with it. So thanks very much for all that you do. You're both wonderful hosts, and I hope to meet you someday. Well, likewise.
Bless your heart.
My gosh, I certainly admire you for doing what you've done, and best wishes for good health and happiness to you. And someday maybe we can meet.
My only concern is that if we meet, we may lull her to sleep.
Hi, it's so nice to meet you, Cynthia. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Alana says, hello, Jeff and Ryan. I am writing to you both to tell you how much I love the podcast. It's so good to know that others still love this iconic show as much as I do. I also love the show because I work in an operating room, and MASH is possibly the most accurate depiction of what it's like to work in that environment. Other than getting bombed and the doctors and nurses sleeping with each other, that only happened once and the doc in question was later arrested. No, I will not elaborate. MASH captures the stress, mess, devastation, and joy that can come from an OR. Not to mention how it shows how much we rely on every person to get through the shift. And despite the fact that MASH is more than 50 years old, episode 11 of season 4, Dear Peggy, still has the most accurate depiction of CPR in any TV show or movie that I've seen to date. I truly love MASH, and I'm really happy to have found a group of people who love the show as much as I do. I do have a question for Jeff. What is the funniest prank pulled on set? Thanks for all you do. Well, thank you, Elena. Jeff, what was the funniest prank you ever saw on MASH?
Well, the funniest prank pulled on the set, I have no idea. This is going to be another question that goes unanswered.
Don't say we didn't warn you, Elena.
I don't know the funniest prank pulled on the set. Most of the pranks were very localized within certain people at certain times. And, you know, the show ended in 1983. This is 2024. And I'm having trouble remembering Tuesday. So I'm sorry. I can't tell you what the funniest prank was. But there were a lot of fun stuff and people were laughing all the time. So
Yeah.
I guess it was just sort of an ongoing fun thing that everybody did.
I believe it was Mike Farrell who told us the stories about David Ogden Stiers pulling pranks.
Yeah.
And pranks that were pulled on him as well. It was kind of a little prank war. One time his dressing room was painted purple or something like that. And then at the commissary, he sent over a bunch of desserts to the MASH table saying they were from the director, Richard Attenborough. Harry Morgan, I guess, knew Richard Attenborough, so he went over to say thank you. And Richard Attenborough didn't know what was going on. And yes, if this sounds familiar, it's because this became a plot device in one of the episodes of MASH, where Charles sends a pie to Margaret saying it was from a handsome pilot. And when she goes over to thank the pilot, she's embarrassed to find out that it didn't come from him. It's funny that these pranks that happened offset made their way onto the set as well.
Yeah, a wacky, kooky bunch of people. And our good friend Bruce says, hey guys, I've been meaning to send in this photo and finally did. To celebrate the 59th anniversary of MASH, we remade our chicken coop door as the door from the swamp. Hope you like it. MASH was very important to me for my whole life and had a big influence on my career and actually my work ethic with patients. Thanks for the podcast. I really enjoy it. Well, Bruce, this is a pretty funny picture of a chicken coop with the swamp painted on it. My goodness, that's
well done.
Very well done. Really excellent thematic work.
Yeah.
The wood, it looks very similar to what was on the swamp. So fine work. Those chickens are probably very happy.
We will put this photo in our show notes for this episode 122 at mashmatters.com. So you can take a look at the swamp chicken coop.
You know, what's going to happen is people with chicken coops are going to be copying this all across the United States. So, Bruce, I hope you have some kind of copyright on that so that you can benefit from it.
I just hope that the chickens aren't in there swilling gin. Also, I'm just now realizing that Bruce said to celebrate the 59th anniversary of MASH. 59th?
Yeah.
Wait a
59th
minute.
anniversary of MASH.
The film came out in 69, but even then, that would only be 55 years, right?
Maybe he's been listening to it for 59 years.
Right. Because what happens is you listen to us and time slows down. It sounds longer than it actually is. And then we eventually lull you to sleep.
He mentions that he actually my work ethic with patients. So there's a chicken coop. I wonder if he's a vet.
Oh.
Could be a veterinarian.
I don't know.
Or psychiatrist.
A chicken psychiatrist?
A chicken psychiatrist.
I don't know, Doc. Which came first, me or the egg? I don't know. All right, let's move on. Victoria says, Dear Jeff and Ryan, like so many others, I wanted to catch up on all your episodes before writing to you. But all I can say is I finally have done so, and I loved every minute of listening. I'm 20 years old, and I listen to your podcast while I'm working my university job. She says I wash and detail cars for the University of Illinois. Hey, the very same one that our beloved Henry Blake attended. And yes, that may have had a slight influence in my decision. Actually, when I graduated high school, my dad had gotten me a replica of Blake's sweater. In one of your recent episodes, you asked about MASH lines we quote regularly. There is one that I often use. When somebody calls for me, I always respond with, yo, like Henry says it, and I believe Hawkeye or Trapper used it at least once. I also have a question for both of you. I have a pair of combat boots, which I have painted to be MASH themed. I've attached a few pictures. Back in 2022, I had the opportunity to see Jamie Farr and Loretta Swit at the Indianapolis Comic Convention. Unfortunately, I was only able to make the first day, so I missed seeing Jeff due to a plane delay. I was able to have Jamie and Loretta sign the boots. I'm hoping that in the near future to obtain signatures from the rest of the remaining cast, including you, Jeff. I know, Jeff, that you do conventions, but I'm not exactly sure how I would be able to get signatures from the others because I don't believe Mike or Alan do conventions. If you have any suggestions or know how I might be able to complete my goal, I would greatly appreciate it. I hope to write again soon as I have another Henry Blake related story, but I wanted to keep this email shorter than a book. Keep up the awesome work. So there's several things here. First of all, Victoria, thank you for writing and thank you for the pictures. We will post some of the pictures of these boots that she painted in the show notes for this episode. They're very well done. Second, U of I is just up the road from me. So, hey, go Illinois. And the sweater that you got was actually a replica that was sold by the University of Illinois a few years back. They don't have it anymore. And I recently reached out to them to see if they were going to bring it back. And they said, as of right now, there are no plans, but other people have asked for it, so they're considering it. So hopefully that will happen and we'll be able to get those sweaters on the market again. All right. So these boots, she took them to the Indianapolis Comic Convention. She was only able to be there the first day, which you had a flight issue and couldn't get there the first day.
Right.
I know this because I too was there. There's a good chance, Victoria, that you and I crossed paths somewhere because I was walking around on that Friday because I didn't know that Jeff wasn't going to be there Friday until I was there. But then we were able to do the big Q&A the next day with Loretta and Jamie and Jeff. You can see that Q&A on our YouTube page. But anyway, Jeff, she missed the opportunity to have you sign the boots and is interested in getting you to sign them and also signatures from the rest of the remaining cast.
Well, I'll speak to that.
What do you have to say about that?
Well, first of all, when I saw those boots, I thought they were pretty cool looking. But I'm looking at them and trying to figure out what she painted. I assume she painted the helicopter and maybe the MASH, the Red Cross thing on there and the little...
And the signposts.
Signpost. Well, the signpost is really well done if she painted that. That's terrific.
Yeah.
Wow. And the little martini glass. When I saw them, I thought, wow, I really like those. That would be fun to have a pair of those. As far as having people sign them, really the only way I can think of is to put them in a box and somehow get somebody's address, send them the boots in a box with another box and a round trip postage on it so that they could sign them and then put them in the box that you send with the box and then send them back to you. Because that's kind of the only way you can do it.
It's dangerous, too, because there's no guarantee that you're going to get them back.
Yeah.
So I'm an autograph collector. I have sent things to people who have signed them and sent them back or have never signed them. And I've lost the things that I've sent to them. And that's the risk you take when you send something to be signed. You don't know if you're going to get it back. We will tell you that Gary, he said on this podcast when he was a guest that he is no longer signing autographs through the mail. Alan, to my knowledge, has also stopped doing that. He did it for a little while, years back, but he does not do that anymore. Mike does sign. Again, the process of putting it in the mail and having the return postage to get it back, if it's really important to you, I think Mike is your best bet, but we do not have an address for him.
Agreed. You're right. He does respond sometimes. You get him in the right spot at the right time, in the right mood. And it's not because people don't want to send autographs back, but sometimes life gets in the way and life is going on and you get these things in the mail and you're not quite sure who's that? And so it just becomes problematic rather than something that people are excited to do. And it's not personal. They don't say, oh gosh, we don't want to do that because we don't like MASH. That's not what it is. It's just kind of life.
Right.
And do send the photo. If you want a photo, just send one photo. Don't send 400 photos. Send one picture.
Send one pair of boots, not 30 pairs of boots.
One pair of boots. And just say, hey, I would so much appreciate you signing this. Thank you so much. And do include a stamped, self-addressed envelope.
And we can't guarantee that he's going to sign it. We're just saying that of the surviving main cast, he is probably the most likely.
And where did you get those boots? I want those boots.
Yeah. Great job on the boots. Again,
Yeah.
We'll put pictures in the show notes for this episode.
By the way, of my 9 years on the show, I wore the same pair of boots for those 9 years. When I first got them, I did take them off when I went home, but they were the most comfortable shoes I've ever worn in my life. I don't know why. Those darn boots were fabulously comfortable. Sometimes I did go home with them because they were just so fun to wear.
All right.
Anyway, that's my boot story.
All right, before we get back to questions, let's take a moment to salute some of our Patreon VIPs. These, Jeff, are our newest enlistees, including Corporal Andy Gates,
And Captain Kelly McKay,
Captain Ben McNeely,
Captain Rob Wolf,
and Captain Stacy Hayes. Thank you for your support. You too can support the show for as little as $3 a month. Just go to mashmatters.com/support and sign up to be a Patreon VIP. By the way, Jeff, we recently talked to VIP majors, Derek and Jamie Wade, and we wanted to give a shout out to their son. You remember their son, Jonathan, who is also a fan of the show. He works as a sous chef at Binkley's in Phoenix.
Yes, indeed.
If you're in beautiful downtown Phoenix, check out Binkley's.
Stop in and say hi to Jonathan.
Yeah.
And tell him that Ryan and Jeff sent you.
And we'll send you an invoice for this ad.
Yeah, to Binkley's. What actually is a sous chef? Why do they call it sous? It must be French. Sous chef must be assistant chef. Do you know?
You're the foodie here. I
know.
I figured that you would know what that means.
I shouldn't I?
A quick Google search says a sous chef is basically the second in command in a kitchen.
Okay.
You got the head chef, then you got the sous chef.
Okay, so maybe sous is second. I don't know. But it does sound French, doesn't it?
Yes.
Sous chef. Yes, it does.
I wonder if it's a bonus if your name is actually Sue. Does that give you a certain edge to get the sous chef position?
Could be.
I tell you, we peaked early by giving an actual answer, and now we're just talking nonsense.
It's sad. It's really sad.
All right. So Tracy has a series of questions here.
All right.
I'm curious, Jeff, how tall are you? I asked because you were Alan's stand-in, and I figured you should have been the same height. Next question. Except for the season 6 episode Major Topper, when Corporal Boots Miller bunked with him, Klinger always bunked alone. How did a lowly enlisted man rate a private tent, and where did all of the other enlisted men reside? Third, the signpost has Boston, Seoul, Coney Island, San Francisco, Tokyo, Burbank, Death Valley, Toledo, Decatur, Seoul, Honolulu, and Indianapolis. Why was Seoul on there twice? Where were Bloomington, Illinois for Blake, Hannibal, Missouri for Potter, Crabapple Cove, Maine for Hawkeye, Mill Valley, California for Honeycutt, and Philadelphia for Mulcahy? Next, how many things did Margaret's father give her mother on their wedding night? Also, if they really had different shifts, why did they have to work 33-hour shifts? And finally, why didn't any of the MASH cast have crew cuts? All right, Jeff, go ahead.
Okay. I know only one of them. So how many? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 I don't know. Of the 6, I don't know any of them except one.
Uh-huh.
And that is, how tall are you? Yes, I was for a time Alan Alda's stand-in, and that was fun to do. I think he was about 6'1", and at the time, I was 6'1". I am now 5'11". So things change over the years from 1980s and early 70s to 2024. The spine collapses, your emotional life, everything just goes, and I'm now shorter. I'm 5'11". So if this was today and he was the same height, I wouldn't have gotten that job because I wasn't tall enough. Yeah. So I'm 5'11" right now. Thanks for asking, Tracy.
Okay, why did Klinger have his own tent? That is one of the mythical, magical, unanswerable questions of MASH.
Yep.
Many people have asked that. Nobody knows the answer. It was for comedy purposes.
Yep.
The signpost. Why is Seoul on there twice? Again, no idea. Actually, I found an article on MASH4077TV.com that talks about the MASH signpost and points out that in the season 1 episode Love Story, Tokyo is on there twice. These other towns that we know of, why are they not on there? Why did BJ take the San Francisco sign at the end of the series when he's from Mill Valley? We don't know.
Our record is standing good. Our record is doing really well with these questions.
We really are. How many things did Margaret's father give her mother on their wedding night? Well, in the episode For One of a Boot, she says that he gave her a riding crop. In Rainbow Bridge, she says that her dad gave her mom a small handgun. And in Alcoholics Unanimous, he gave her a silver flask. So we have a riding crop, a handgun, and a silver flask, which, I guess you could have a pretty good night with that, right?
Good weekend.
If they really had different shifts, why did they have to work 33-hour shifts? Say it with us. I don't
know.
And why didn't any of the MASH cast have crew cuts? Well, Jeff, we've talked about your hair on this podcast on several occasions, and you were very protective and proud of your hair.
I was.
Can you speak to this? Why wouldn't the cast have crew cuts? Because, you do watch it now, and you see, like, Margaret's hair was definitely late 1970s hair. It wasn't the hair that you would expect in the 50s. And, when you didn't have your hat on, your hair was shaggier than most soldiers would have had their hair, and nobody had crew cuts. Why is that?
Well, I think because most of the cast, all of the cast actually, were actors. And
They
actors.
were?
Yes, they were. They were. There was only one that wasn't, and I'm not going to reveal that name.
Wow.
But most of them were. And there is a certain aesthetic quality to being an actor that you look in the mirror and you say, well, how do I look? What do I look in there? How about my hair? And crew cuts are not necessarily things that really give you a great deal of enhancement to your look.
Mhm.
So
Unless you're like Brad Pitt.
if you're Brad Pitt, you can get, crew cuts.
Yes.
But most people, aren't. And so it's not necessarily something that people want to aspire to get a crew cut.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the, in fact, a lot of the background artists also did not have crew cuts because they didn't like them. And they weren't required really to have crew cuts on the show. When you look at Alan Alda, BJ and everybody else, they had long, fluffy, scrumpy hair.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't a lot of effort to make everybody have a military-esque haircut. So that's why.
So let's go back to season 2 when you joined the series.
Yes.
And they started noticing you and said, hey, we want to make Igor a bigger part of MASH.
Uh-huh.
But you have to get a crew cut. What would you have said?
I would have said, there are a lot of other good television shows around here I can work on.
I'm going to go work on Alice.
Yeah.
8 is enough.
I can be a game show host, Shoppers
Yes.
Casino. I can do that, ladies and gentlemen.
And you did.
And I did.
It was amazing.
My hair looked pretty good on that show. I will say there was one comment about my hair being long, and it was one day I went in there, it was quite long, and I think the assistant director came in, Jeff, your hair is really, it's pretty long. I said, okay, I get it. So I took my hat and shoved it way down over my ears and shoved the hair up underneath the hat. That actually helped me give Igor his character.
Yeah.
Because he pulled his hat down and shoved his hair up there. And so his ears were pressed under that hat. So it was fun. And it lasted for 9 years. Okay. Tim says, hi, guys. A big fan from Australia. Have been listening to the podcast for the last few months and have been binge listening and have almost caught up. A question for Jeff. Sorry if it's been asked before. Were there any guest stars that appear on the show that Jeff was a fan of and nervous about seeing on the set, such as Pat Hingle, Ned Beatty, Leslie Nielsen, etc.? Well, there was only one person that kind of wrangled me for a moment, and that was Jackie Cooper. I didn't know anybody else that was connected to MASH when I got there. I didn't know who Alan Alda was. I didn't know anybody. So when Jackie Cooper came on, Jackie Cooper was known to me because I used to watch his own old TV series and I liked him in movies. So when he walked on the set, I went, wow, it's Jackie Cooper. And as a matter of fact, Jackie Cooper directed the very first episode that I ever spoke lines on. So it was very exciting to me to have Jackie Cooper watching me and saying things to me, which he actually didn't. I was hoping he would, Jeff, the next time you do that, let's do it with a little more speed. He didn't say anything. He did, all right, move on. He said nothing, and I was a little disappointed. But Jackie Cooper was the only guy that kind of unhinged me for the moment.
Yeah, he was a director. He was also an actor. I think a lot of people remember him most from the Superman movies. He played Perry White. He was also a big director and came in and was not well liked by most of the cast. I guess he and Alan had some tension, and I remember McLean Stevenson talking about him in episode 100 that we released, how he didn't gel real well with the cast, although he did direct several episodes.
He was a balls to the wall kind of guy. He was, all right, let's go, come on, let's go. And that rhythm didn't set well with a number of the cast members. So it wasn't his ability or talent for skill or knowing where to put the camera and, helping people go through the lines. But it was his speed and kind of his attitude about doing everything that really unhinged everybody, unfortunately, because he was a good guy. I used to he had a show. Do you remember the name of that show he had? He was a doctor or something. He was in the Navy or something, and he was a doctor.
It was called Hennessy.
I loved that show, Hennessy. Loved it. And I had a horrible crush
on Jackie Cooper?
Well, I mean,
this is a scoop, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
this is a scoop.
Ladies and gentlemen. No, I had a huge crush on his co-star, Abby Dalton. I loved Abby Dalton with a passion. So that's why I remember Hennessy and him. He was a very good actor, a very talented guy, and a really good director. And it's too bad that he had that kind of attitude towards, getting these things done, because he'd still be directing that show probably.
Well, I mean, he's dead now, but
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh,
Yeah, it's all right.
sorry for your loss, Ryan.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Boy, that's rough.
Let's move on. Kelsey says, hello, Jeff and Ryan. Greetings from New Brunswick, Canada. I recently discovered your podcast, and I've been loving it. You were discussing folks using lines from MASH in their everyday lives, and I wanted to share a couple of Hawkeye lines that I use, usually uttered at work. And Victoria actually mentioned this earlier in her message. Whenever someone calls my name, I respond with a Hawkeye, yo. When there's too much happening at once, she says, don't confuse me. I can only handle one catastrophe at a time. When I don't have enough arms and legs to get everything done, she says, my kingdom for an intelligent octopus. Thanks for the awesome podcast and keep doing what you're doing. Well, thank you, Kelsey. Laura also wrote to us on this subject, Jeff.
And she said, dear Jeff and Ryan, in a podcast late last year, you asked what MASH phrases we use in everyday life. I don't have one I have to use every day, but I do have one I used at a pivotal point in my life. In February 2016, my father had a terminal hemorrhagic stroke. His brain could never recover, but his heart was too stubborn to stop beating. My family made the decision to allow him to remain on a respirator for 48 hours with the hope he could be an organ donor. During that time, I watched my mother deteriorate in her grief, and I knew we couldn't extend how long we allowed my father's body to live, despite knowing doing so could give someone else a needed kidney or liver. About 24 hours after waiting for his heart to stop, I found a quiet place and began to pray. But like Father Mulcahy in Mulcahy's War, one of my favorite episodes, by the way, I couldn't come up with a prayer. And then I channeled Father Mulcahy in Lifetime when he prayed, if you're going to take him anyway, take him quickly so the other person can live. My mother is the MASH fan, but I believe my father would have approved. Well, that's a very touching story. Laura?
It's incredible that the show that was on the air so many years ago, these writers who wrote these words, they're still used today.
Mm-hmm.
They're remembered. People apply them to their lives, either for humor or to cope or to get through a difficult situation. It's just remarkable. I mean, you don't find too many people quoting heart to heart or different strokes or things like that. But there are still things in MASH that are so relevant today as they were back then that people are still impacted by them to this day. It's amazing.
It is. Really is.
Kyle says, hello, Jeff and Ryan, and welcome to Korea Part 2. When the tire on the General's Jeep goes out, Radar realizes he left his bubblegum in the other Jeep. However, after escaping the sniper fire, a Chiclet magically appears when BJ asks if it's a sedative. I have never thought about that, Kyle, but you're right. Radar's Magic Chiclet. You know, that might be the title for this episode. Radar's Magic Chiclet.
Radar's Magic Chiclet could go into the chicken coop that says MASH on it. Well, Charlie writes and says, greetings, Jeff and Ryan. Recently, I was looking into the awards Colonel Blake wore on his dress uniform as something seemed off about them. Aside from not being in the correct order, he is also wearing an award that did not exist until 1954. Well, that's a little mistake, huh? Mm-hmm. I came across a fan wiki page for the character. It mentions an actual incident in which a plane went down in the Sea of Japan, and among those killed was an Air Force nurse by the name of Captain Vera Brown. I decided to see if I could learn more about Captain Brown and discovered the story of Captain Janita Bonham. The nurses portrayed in MASH were largely relegated to supporting roles and often weren't shown as the courageous soldiers they were in real life. I can't possibly do justice to the story about Captain Bonham, so here's a link to an article I found about her actions when her plane went down in the Sea of Japan. Thanks to Captain Bonham, there were 28 survivors. Wow, what a story. I didn't know about that. Interesting.
It is a remarkable story, and we will put the link to that story about Captain Bonham and her efforts to save these passengers on that plane. We'll put that link in the show notes, and you can read that. Just go to mashmatters.com, find episode 122, and click the link, and you'll find the show notes. But yeah, I think it's true that sometimes the nurses didn't get to be the heroes of the story. in real life, they were very much the heroes of many, many stories. So it's good the internet exists that we were able to tell some of those stories and give credit where credit is due.
And I think Loretta Swit is to be credited a great deal in her efforts during the show to maintain the dignity of the nurses and to maintain the quality and the efforts that they put in to save people and to be that soldier that everybody was. And she worked hard to do it. And of course, she was the only female on the cast. And so those writers had to write for those doctors and for all those guys. But she stuck in there, hung in there, and fought hard to make sure that the nurses weren't forgotten.
And finally, Chris says, hello, Jeff and Ryan. Greetings from Wenatchee, Washington. I hope I pronounced that right. Just wanted to tell you how great you're doing and keep it up. Well, thank you, Chris. And that's a great way to end this episode of MASH. Oh, he has more, doesn't he? Never mind. Okay, so far, my favorite episode is the table read. Awesome insight into the show. Thank you. Yes, it's one of my favorite episodes as well. Also, I wanted to tell you that I have found a way to write in my journal after many years. My girlfriend got me a beautiful journal, but finding a way to start writing in one has always been hard for me as I'm not a writer. However, I decided to take a page from Dr. Friedman and write as if I'm writing to a person. So I begin every entry with, Dear Sydney. It has worked wonders, and it's also fun to do. I tell Sydney about my day, my adventures with my kids, everything. I hope this idea helps other people too who are struggling to write. How awesome is that?
I think it's a great lesson for writers and actors.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I do a lot of writing in my job, and so I know how hard it can be sometimes to start writing, and staring at a blank page or a blank screen can be intimidating sometimes. Chris found a way to get through that. And one of the great ways to do it is by pretending that you're writing a letter, picking somebody. It doesn't have to be Sidney Freeman. Of course, Sidney wrote to Sigmund Freud. But, is there somebody meaningful to you, whether it's a real person in your life or a fictional person or a historical person or somebody that you can write to? Take a page from Chris and write a letter to them. Start it off with, Dear Jeff Maxwell. Tell Jeff about your day and your life and your loves and your fears and your dreams.
Just send me the love and admiration, page after page, to me. No, I think it's a wonderful lesson. It is when you're sitting there talking, because if you think about a person that gives you an emotional connection, you're suddenly connected to your emotional life about that person one way or the other. And now you're not thinking, should I use, which word do I use? You're telling a story and you're talking to somebody that you have a feeling for. And actors do that. Writers do that. It's a terrific way to get your mojo going and to be able to express what you want to express, because you're expressing it to a real person rather than some fantasy thing. So it's great. Good for you, Chris.
And that does it for this episode of MASH Matters.
No, really? We have 700 other emails to read.
You're right, we do.
Yeah, okay, let's go.
And we're going to have more because I'm about to say, if you would like to write us, you can do that at mashmatterspodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on X/Twitter, on Instagram. You can also listen to episodes on your favorite podcast player and on YouTube. And you can also rate and review us if you like. We love reading some of the reviews that you leave at Apple Podcasts. So if you would like to do that, please do that.
Yeah.
Until next time, here's looking up your old address.